Awesome. So we'll start out with the very beginning. I do like to do a little bit of teaching. And so I want to explain why it's important, first of all, to have templates when you're creating forms. So whenever you're using in your business and whenever you are going to be communicating with your clients, client relationships are built through touch points, like sending an email to the client or sending out a contract. Those are considered touch points. So when you're working with a client, you're obviously going to be sending them content, whether it's pitching your pricing or sending an email contract, and those are going to be considered touch points. If you're building relationships with multiple clients at one time, or the same type of client again and again, you can create a template in Dubsado for each touch point, each time you're going to be communicating with them, so that you don't have to start from scratch with each person. So one thing that is very obvious in Dubsado is that everybody wants to save time and they don't want to have to be creating the same thing over and over again. And that's where templates come into play. So beyond workflows, beyond automation and all of that, templates actually save you time, because what you're going to do is create a base to start with, and then you can use that for every single client moving forward. So building and creating templates will save you an enormous amount of time if you're planning to scale your business and also increase your clientele or increase the amount of people you can communicate with at one time. So if you start with a starting point and create a template, you can use that for any person who comes in and says, hey, I'm interested in your service or your product. So that's why it's important in Dubsado to create templates. So that way you're not having to recreate the same thing over and over again, and it'll save you a lot of time. So what we'll do now is we're going to talk about just how to build a form, and then we'll get into the different types of forms once we understand how to build one. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to go into Dubsado, and we're going to spend all of our time today underneath the template section over here and then underneath forms. And we're going to talk about all of these different forms today, all the different purposes of them. But the first thing we'll do is talk about building a form. So when you're going to build a form, the first thing you're going to do is click the plus button next to whichever category you want to build that form in. So we'll click the plus button here, and it'll take us to this blank page. Now, when you're building a form in Dubsado, what you're going to do is you're going to use these elements over here on the right-hand side, and we'll get into each one of these elements here in just a little bit and the purposes of each one. But these elements on the right-hand side are going to be the building blocks that you're going to use to build and construct your template that you're going to be sending out to the client. So what you can do here is you can do one of two things. You can either take one of these elements. So let's say we grab a short answer box. You can either click and drag and put it onto the form that way. So any of these elements you can just click and drag if you would like to. The other option you can do is if you just click on an element, it will add it to the bottom of the form automatically. So if I just click on images, it will add an images box at the very bottom point of that form. Wherever the bottom is, it will just add it in. So if I do a signature area, I'll click on that and it'll add a signature to the bottom there. So you can either click and drag and bring it onto the form. So let's say I did this and I want to put it in between some of these different elements that I've already added onto the form. I can do that and just click and drag it on there, or just click and it'll go to the bottom. So those are the two ways that you can bring elements onto a form. And so I wanted to make sure we highlight that. Now, there are some options for you guys when it comes to building forms. You can either build a form from scratch, like what I'm doing here, where I have my different elements and I'm actually physically building the form here. The other option that you have is on the forms page here. We'll go back to forms. And we do have a template library that's available. So let's say you're brand new to business and some of the forms that we talk about today, you haven't even thought about bringing those into your process. But when I explain the different types of forms, you might say, oh, I actually want to use that in my process, but I don't have anything to go off of. I don't have a base template to start with. What you can do is over here in the top right-hand corner, you'll see the button that says Template Library. If we click on that, That's going to open up our template library where we have a lot of different forms that are based off of industry. And all of these are free templates that you can use and add into your account and then make changes to them. So if you want to scroll through here and find something that fits more of your industry, or even if you find something that you just like the aesthetics of it, you can copy these into your account by just clicking the preview button there, and it will bring up a preview of this form. And then at the top here, you can click copy to account, and that will add this template into your account. And then you can just make changes from that point. So you can change the wording, you can change the pictures, but you can use these if you like the aesthetics of it and you just want to, maybe change the copy in there, or if you just don't have anything like that in your process and you want to add something like that, you can scroll through and find something that closely matches your industry, and then you can add that into your account. So we do have that available if you don't want to build something from scratch or design really isn't your forte. You can use the template library to kind of give you a base to start with and then make some changes from there. So that's another option that we have. And then the third option that we have is if you have templates that you are already using with your business. So let's say you have contracts already that you're using, or you have questionnaires or a proposal or / quote that you're using right now. You can actually send those over to us and we can recreate those for you as Dubsado templates. And what you can do there is just send them to forms@dubsado.com. And so that way we can take those and recreate those as Dubsado templates, and we'll do up to 10 for you for free. So you can send those over to us. We have a team that will basically take what you've already done on your Word document, on a PDF that you already have, and we'll take that and make it into a Dubsado form. The reason that you want to make it into a Dubsado form is because in our system, in order to have a client fill out a form, it has to be a Dubsado form. There's not a way for you to just take a form like a Word document that you're using or a PDF that you're using and just send it to the client through Dubsado and have them actually fill it out. It has to be a Dubsado template, a created Dubsado template, in order to capture the information that the client's going to be typing or signing or filling out on these forms. So we do have those options available there. It just in case you don't want to build something from scratch, or you already have a form that you don't have a lot of time and want it in your account, you can do it that way. Or if you really like building forms and you want to learn about the system and learn how to build forms, you can always just build one from scratch, and then you can create that in Dubsado. So that's how you're going to actually build a form. The next thing we're going to talk about are the different elements. So we talked about building a form. Now we'll get into the different elements that you can use. So when I go into a form here, we're going to be talking about first all of the basic elements that you can add in. There's basic elements, and then there's also special elements that go onto specific forms. So not every form in our system has the same elements that you can use. There are specific special ones that go with certain forms, and we'll talk about that here as we move through these. So the first thing we'll talk about are the ones that are available for every single form. So we'll talk about those. The first ones we'll talk about are going to be the branding elements. So these are going to be the ones where you can put in things that have to do with just the styling of the form, or adding your branding to the element, or to the form rather. So the two that we have as far as elements are text boxes and images. Those are going to be the two ones that you can use to create the branding for your actual form. So those ones here, we'll drag those in. If you click on text box, and we'll add that in there, this allows you to put copy onto your actual template. So when you're making a contract, let's say, and you want all of your terms and agreements, all of your different sections of your contract, you'll use a text box to just put text onto your actual form. Pretty straightforward. The other thing that you can do with branding is use the images element, and we'll click on that. This is going to add an images element to your form, and this will actually open it up where you can add pictures onto your form, whether they are already in the system here or you can upload new ones, but you can use the images element to put actual pictures on your form. So that way you can add your own branding to that form there. So those are going to be the branding elements that you can use, are text and images. Now we'll get into client response elements. These are going to be ones that it's going to have the client input things onto the form. So text boxes and images, those are things that the client doesn't fill in or edit. That's things that you as the business owner only put on the form, and the client isn't able to edit those. Client response elements are going to be ones where when you send this out to a client, they can actually type and fill things in. So the first one we're going to talk about is short answer. Short answer right here is going to be a way that a client can put in just a brief response. So normally, and I have it written here on the outline, it's going to be a single line response. So normally it'll just be, maybe 2 to 5 words normally is going to be what's in there, or 1 to 5 words rather. And this works great for contact information like name or email. And how the short answer boxes work is when you click on these, you can actually assign whatever they type in there, you can actually assign that to a certain space within our system. And there's ways that you can create custom mapped fields. That's a whole nother side of Dubsado we won't really get into today, but you can create these where when they type in an answer, then it will map to a certain point in the system. But these are great for single line responses. If you need your client to type in more than just a single line response, then what we recommend doing is using the free response element, which is right here. And the free response element, you can see it's a little bit bigger of a space to fill in there. When you click on this, this is great to ask questions where they're going to be typing in a lot of information. So, tell me about your history or tell me about your life, and they can type in a lot of information. That's what free response boxes are great for. The next one we'll talk about is yes, no. So if you need someone to choose between A or B, so it's either one option or the other, you can use yes, no for those. This is going to be a way that you can customize what the positive response is or the negative response. And so in this situation, it's only A or B. You can't have them choose more than one answer. So you can use yes, no questions for that. The next one we'll talk about on the outline, I want to make sure we're following in order, is the drop-down boxes. So these provide multiple options in a drop-down, and still the client can only choose one answer. So with the drop-down box, if we click that, this is where you can actually give multiple options, but again, they can only choose one. So that's what the drop-down box is great for. If you need to have them select multiple options and also make multiple selections there, then the check boxes are going to be great for that. So this gives them the option to check multiple boxes, and you can give multiple options. With the checkbox, there isn't a limit to how many they can check or how many options you want to give. So this is great if you need them to make a lot of different selections. You'll use check boxes for that. And then the last one that we have is the date select. So if you want your client to be able to select a certain date, this can be linked to the project date. This can be linked to any custom map field dates that you've created. So you can use this if you want your client to select certain dates that you want to have saved, you can use the date select option there. So these are going to be the client response elements that you can use on your form. And then the last one that we'll talk about is actually one that's kind of in its own lane, which is the layout element. The layout element, this is going to allow you to change the structure of your form, the layout of the actual form. And so what you can do here is if you grab the columns box, and that's going to be the first one up there, this is going to allow you to put your form into different columns. So you can choose if you want this container to be 2, 3, 4 columns long. So let's say we do a 3-column box here, and you can choose if you want there to be a title. Let's say we just remove that here. What you can do with the layout now is you can actually drag elements in here. And since we chose 3 columns, you can put in a 3-column structure and it fits inside of this overall container. So this is a great way to change the overall layout of the form. And that's going to be another element that you can use there to give your form a little bit of variety. So it's not just one element after another. You can put elements side by side if you would like to. So that gives you a layout capability there. So those are going to be the basic elements that come with every single form. So no matter what form you're using, you can use these on every single one to customize either the branding, how a client's going to type in information, or the overall layout. So now what we'll do is we're going to talk about the different types of forms. So this is really what the core of this presentation is, of this webinar, is to talk about the different form types and how you can use these appropriately. So the first one we're going to talk about is the contracts. So if we go to, and we're actually in contracts now, but we'll go back to the main forms section here. Contracts here are going to give you the ability to send out a form to the client and have them sign electronically. So if you're familiar with systems like HelloSign or DocuSign, where they're electronically signing different documents, you can use the contract section for that. Now, if we open this up here, again, you can use all of these elements here to build the overall structure of your form. But what's special with the contracts is that you can add signature elements and initials elements to the form. So when we're talking about these different forms here moving forward, the special elements that I'll highlight are only going to be ones that are available for this specific form that aren't available for all form types. So these ones are special ones. So with the contract, you can add in a signature, or you can even add in an initials space. So maybe after each paragraph in your contract, if you need them to initial on each one, you can add initial elements in there as well too, along with the signature area when you want them to sign. And one thing I will say about contracts as well, currently, if you want there to be multiple signatures on a contract, you will have to have the parties at the same space at the same time sign the contract. So we don't have a way to do multiple signatures if the parties aren't in the same place at the same time signing it, but that's going to be changing later. So with the contracts here, you can open it up, and if you do, you can make a space for you as the business owner to sign. So you could have a space where the client signs, and then add in a signature area and make it for the business owner to sign so that you have two on there. That's possible. But the big thing with this is that signature areas and initial elements, those are going to be ones that you can add specifically to the contract here. And the other thing that's very important with this as well is you can only have one contract assigned per project. And so with that, what makes it available for you to have more than one contract needing to be signed per form is the sub-agreements, which we're going to get into next. The other thing that I'll mention about contracts that's really important too as well is that when you're sending out a contract in a project, and this is for anyone who's planning on sending contracts or is in that space in their setup when they're sending out contracts, you're going to be using the contract link to send out your contract. So anytime you're adding a contract into an email, you want to be using the contract link, and that's going to give a button for the client to click on to send out that contract. So that's just a little bit of additional information in there. Sub-agreements. So with sub-agreements, these also allow for electronic signatures. This type of document is going to be used for something like a photo release, a waiver, a design proof, maybe an amendment to a contract that's already in play, anything that you want your client to sign in addition to your normal terms and conditions. So the big difference between contracts and sub-agreements is that contracts are going to be more for your basic terms and conditions, just your general contract. Sub-agreements are going to be used for anything that needs additional signatures. So any secondary contracts, waivers, proofs, different things like that. So with this here, the special thing about sub-agreements is that you can add as many of these to a project as you want to. So while contracts, you can only have one per project, Sub-agreements, you can have as many as you would like to in a project. So that's a way that you can have multiple contracts in a project, is by creating sub-agreements and then adding those into the form, or into the project rather. So as far as special elements go with this, it's the exact same as the contracts. The special elements you can use are signature areas, and then initials elements as well. So same thing as contracts as far as special elements. Now, a big difference between sub-agreements and contracts is that you're actually going to be using the form link when you're sending out sub-agreements. The reason you're not using the contract link is because what we just said earlier, you can only have one contract per project. So contracts are kind of their own separate entity in Dubsado, where sub-agreements function more like just regular forms that you're sending out. So you'll use the form link when you're sending sub-agreements, not the contract link. So that is just something to take in if you're sending out a sub-agreement through a project. The next one we'll talk about is the questionnaires. Questionnaires are going to be one of the most open-ended forms that we have. You can really use questionnaires for just about anything. But the purpose of a questionnaire is to collect information from the client, most commonly asking about their preferences, background information, general feedback. You use questionnaires to collect info from the client that normally extends outside of basic contact information, and we'll explain why here in a little bit. But questionnaires is if you just want to collect more information from the client. That's the main purpose. Now, with the questionnaire, there's a lot that you can do with them, and I'll kind of talk through some of those things here. So with the questionnaire, we'll talk about the special elements with the questionnaire. The first thing is going to be the code block that we'll talk about. Code blocks in Dubsado allow you to input custom CSS, HTML code into the form, and you can embed different pieces of content into a form. So if you have, let's say, like a YouTube video, a Vimeo video, different things like that that you want to embed into the form, you can use the code block here to embed that into your form. So if you are familiar with CSS and you want to make customizations to your form, you can put in a code block, use it that way. But that's the main purpose of the code block, is to be able to bring in some different styling, embed different things into your actual form there. The file uploader, which is a really popular element that we have that you can use to take advantage of. A lot of people want to know, how can I get clients to send me pictures, send me Word documents, send me Excel spreadsheets? How can I have the client send me those things? The best way to do that is to add a file uploader to one of your forms, because what you can do is click into this and you can choose what the allowed file types are if you would like to there. But what you can do is you can have your client upload certain files into this space here. And by doing that, they can upload videos, they can upload PDFs or Word documents or images if you would like to. The only thing with this is that there's not a limit to how many files can be put in here, but there is a limit to the file size for each file. And the cap on that is 5 megabytes per file. So just to make sure you're inside of that limit, but you can have your clients upload PDFs and Word documents and pictures and whatnot. They can upload that straight onto the form. And if you are needing to send something to the client, what you could do is upload these forms or pictures or Word documents that you need your client to get. And you can upload those onto the form before you send it out to the client, so that when they get this, the client can extract these off of the form. So that's something that's really special about the file uploader that you can use. And then the last thing underneath the questionnaires is the project tracking. So with project tracking, what you can do here is you can actually track where your client heard about you. So one thing we do have in our system is called project sources. That's underneath reporting and project sources. So with project sources, you can create different sources for where your client heard about you. So Facebook, Instagram, Google, referral, different things like that. And what you can do from there is you can add these to your form. So let's say that we add, Facebook, we'll add in Instagram, and we'll add in referral. And you can create any different type of project source that you want to. But what this will do for you is when a client clicks on this, they'll be selecting from where they heard about you, and Dubsado tracks that, and you can view the breakdown in project breakdown. So you can see how much money you're making from each different project source. It's a great way to track lead information and see where you're getting the most business. So you can add that to a questionnaire as well if you would like to. But those are the special elements that are with a questionnaire. Something as far as important information about a questionnaire, and there's actually one that's not in here that I want to add in. So for you people who are watching these, you'll get a little bit extra information that's not on the outline. One thing with the questionnaires is that the questionnaires are never fully closed. And what I mean by that is you can always go back in and edit information on a questionnaire. So if you need something that's like a live document for your clients where the information on the form can be updated at any time and it works like a live document, the questionnaires are the best for that, because you can go in at any time and you can update that information on the form. So it works like a live document. All of the other forms that we have, so contracts, sub-agreements, proposals, lead capture forms, when those are filled out, they're fully closed. So you can't go back in and make changes or edits to those once they've been signed off on, submitted, filled out. But the questionnaires actually work like open documents where you can go in and make changes. So that's a great form to use if you're needing something along that line, like a timeline that you want your client to fill in for a wedding or an event, note-taking, different things like that. The other thing about questionnaires is that you can upload a read-only PDF as a Dubsado questionnaire. So what you can do with these, I'll go back to templates and forms here. And underneath the questionnaires, you'll see this little up arrow right here. And the up arrow gives you the ability to select a PDF and just drop it in here and use it as a Dubsado template. And what you can do with this, and kind of just to make sure that you're aware of how this will work, is that this is only for read-only PDFs, meaning that if you decide to use this option, that doesn't mean that the client can fill out this form. It's more for read-only purposes. So if you have an informative PDF, let's just say you have a quick pricing guide that you want to send out to the client, not for them to choose anything, but you can drop in a PDF here and just send it out to the client if it's just a form you want to give to the client to have them read over. So that's also a possibility with questionnaires as well. The next form we'll talk about here is the proposals. With proposals, these are to help you pitch your products and services to a client. So whether you offer packages or completely custom quotes, proposals make it easy for clients to book with you whenever they're ready. So these are going to be more like order forms that you can send out to the client. And we won't do a deep dive into proposals because we have full webinars on these. But the whole purpose of a proposal is to send out your pricing to a client. And the special elements that we have for proposals is the code block. So you can put in, you can embed things on there. We have the file uploader. We have project tracking. And one that's only for the proposal is the package element. And if you're familiar with packages, it's underneath templates and packages. You can build your services and products in Dubsado and put them on this form so that your client can go through and make selections on this form. And then once they make these selections and they submit this form, it automatically creates an invoice in their project. So this really works like an order form, typical to sending something out. They make their selections and then you have an invoice created. So it really works like an order form. And something that's special with the proposal is in the settings menu, you can actually add in a contract and the invoice that gets created. You can add that with the proposal. So they can fill out the proposal, they can sign, and then they can also make a payment all in one bundle. So that's a really special thing that you can do with a proposal. The other thing too as well is you can make a proposal public. And with public proposals, that's where you can take a proposal and you can put it on your website so people can make purchases directly through the website. So there is a possibility to do a public proposal. And if you do have a public proposal, you can add workflows to start from there too as well. So we won't get into too much detail there because that's a whole nother webinar that we do have on our YouTube channel. If you want to check that out, we have a whole webinar on proposals to get more in-depth information there. And then the last form that we have is the lead capture form. The lead capture form in Dubsado is the first form that you're going to have that is the first point of contact for your client. So with a lead capture form, the purpose of this form is to take this and embed it on your website or send it out to anybody who is a potential lead. When someone fills out this form, it creates a new project in Dubsado. So this is the form that we have that gets people into the system. So with this form, you'll usually ask basic contact information on this form for your clients to fill out. The special elements that you have here are code block, file uploader, and project tracking. But with the lead capture, there's one particular element that no other form has, and that's the workflow element. With the workflow element, you can ask a question on the form and have a different workflow start based off of the answer that they choose. So this works really well if you have multiple workflows or different services that you want someone to be able to get started in their project. You can ask a question on the form and have a different workflow start based off of the answer that they choose. So that's a really great way to get them on the right track whenever they fill out an inquiry form on your website, or if you share it with someone on social media. What you can do is with the share button up here at the top, you can actually either embed this on your website, or you could just send out this direct link to anybody and they can fill that out. And then they would be able to fill that out and a project to get created. So that's going to be a rundown on the different form types and the special elements that come along with those. And so hopefully if you guys download this handout, you can use this as kind of a cheat sheet for how you want to build your forms out. And it gives you the different elements and the different information about each form.